Before we begin, I just want to say a big thank you once again to the iconic officers team, to Saoirse, Christina, and the rest for organizing this suite of events, not just today, but also the previous ones and also those which are coming up. So thanks so much for making this happen for all of us. And I also want to say a big thank you for all members of the audience, for you all for joining in from wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in. Thank you so much for making the time, for doing whatever it takes to invest in your personal and professional success. So I can see some familiar faces, some familiar names. So thanks so much for joining again. It's nice to see you. So hello to Alexandra, Amy, there's two Amy's, to Anita, Connor, Evan, Hong, Jessica, Jonathan, Laura, Leanne, Matthias, Mikhail, Nicola, Robin, Sandy, Simona, Sylvia, Casey, and those who are signing in as well. So thanks so much for joining us. Really nice to see you all today. So we actually have quite a bit of materials to cover. This is a very cool and interesting topic, and I thought this will be helpful whether you are a leader or manager or not, because at the end of the day, life is a game of influence. So you don't necessarily have to be a boss per se to build up the necessary skills. So whenever we work with people, we are already exerting some form of influence. So how do we become a better leader, manager, or influencer or a boss? We're going to be covering some theories, concepts, ideas, and frameworks. Quite a number of them are really practical, which you can use straight away in your workplace, right? So, housekeeping. So just to set some ground rules so that we can get the most out of today's session. Number one, engage and participate as much as you can. All right, so feel free to jump into the chat. I got a chat box open as well. So any questions, thoughts, or ideas, pop it in, have it ready, because I'm going to be asking us some questions and I want you all to pop in your answer. All right, take down notes. So we want to make the most out of this learning experience. So don't worry about taking down notes from the slides, because the slides will be shared with everyone. What we want to take down are actually those insights, those aha moments, which might not be on the materials itself, because sometimes we might go down a different tangent depending on where the discussion takes us, all right? We want to capture those learning moments. Don't want to miss out on that. Ask questions, whether it's towards the end or throughout the session. Feel free to just pop it into the chat, because I'll be looking at that as we go along. And last but not least, tune out any possible distractions. So minimize or close any unnecessary tabs, because if we want to make the most out of the session, so definitely putting aside all other like social media apps and all that, because we can always come back to those after today. All right, so thanks so much for your full 100% attention. All right, so first question, which I always like to get people to pop into the chat box, is where are you tuning from? Where is your physical geographical location? So currently I'm tuning in from Melbourne in Australia. Okay, so a lot of people in Dublin, London, Norway. All right, so on the other side of the world. So whether it's good morning, good afternoon, or it's actually evening for me on this side. So oh, Hong is dialing in from Shanghai. So nice to see you all. So this kind of virtual event, even though it'd be nice to see everyone face to face one day, but nevertheless, doing it virtually allows us to tune in from wherever we are, especially in the comfort of your own home. All right, so thanks so much for joining us today. One thing which I'd like to make it interactive also is whenever we come across content, concepts, or ideas, which is kind of like a fresh insight or revelation, feel free to pop in aha into the chat box. Right, but if it's something a bit more intense, if it's something that maybe we've realized that we haven't been doing right, if it's really a wake-up call or a reality check, so to speak, pop in OMG into the chat box. All right, so it's really, really interesting to see how people respond to things. Sometimes we might cover content which we are already familiar with. Sometimes it's something that is really refreshing and enlightening. All right. Cool. So if you're wondering who's this person speaking to you from the other side of the world, let me just give you a brief intro before we jump straight into the content. So I had a chance to speak on the TEDx stage twice in Melbourne, in Australia, a few years before COVID in itself. So currently I work as the People and Culture Manager for the Australian region for OSF Digital. That is one of the global digital transformation agencies. I had a chance to speak around the globe across 12 countries and over more than 12 cities, including Dublin. That was where I met the Iconic Officers team in person a couple of years ago. I think it was 2019, February or March 2019 back then. All right, so I was featured on a couple of major media outlets, and I had a chance to also coach clients from corporates like EY, Deloitte, and ANZ Bank. And on the side, I'm also a certified and accredited careers counselor. That is something which I'm really passionate about. And then in my free time, I like a lot of long distance running, investing, trading, and also on the finance side of things as well. All right. So talking about speaking across different parts of the world. So on the top left-hand side, that was myself on the TEDx stage. Top right-hand side was a resilience workshop for the Tesla employees, engineers, and mid-level managers over in the Melbourne office. Bottom left-hand side is the Google staff over in the Singapore office, and bottom right is the is part of the African Youth Leadership Summit. So that's one of my favorite ones over in Marrakesh in Morocco. So definitely a privilege and pleasure to be able to speak to people from different parts of the world, from different backgrounds, different industries, sharing different ideas and all that. All right, so as much as I'll be speaking a lot today, if I'm talking too fast, let me know. I tend to get very excited. But as much as I'm talking a lot, we are also learning from one another. All right, so without further ado, let us jump straight into the menu for today. All right, so what do we have in store? 5 sections, right? So number 1, why is leadership important? Number 2, the Maslow check-in. So if you've studied psychology, whether it's clinical or organizational psychology, or even business and commerce, we would have come across Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is something which comes in handy, especially if you are leading people. Right, we're going to be talking about coaching styles. So previously I ran a session on coaching skills and capabilities for managers and leaders. So I'll be touching about some of those practical frameworks which you can use straight away in your workplace. And then number 4, dissecting and handling tough conversations. So whether you are a boss, a leader, or a manager, someone who is having oversight of a team where you have direct reports. All right, so this is something which you will actually come across eventually, having to have difficult conversations with the people you manage, right? Not exactly the easiest thing in the world, but there are ways to navigate through this. And we're going to cover some practical truths. And last but not least, I'm going to finish up with some best practices on how to develop our leadership capabilities. All right, so the first one, why is leadership important? Right, so the next slide we'll have a short activity. All right, so have your keyboards ready on the chat box. So what I'll do is I'll share a series of photos in the next slide, and what I want every one of us to do is pop in what comes to mind. All right, what ideas or what themes come to mind when you see those images. All right, and then we can discuss further. All right, so this is the slide. So there are 3 sets of image: on the left, in the middle, and on the right. Right. So in the context of leadership, look at these images and maybe pop into the chat. What does that mean in relation to leadership? Why is leadership important with regards to the images on this slide? So what comes to mind? I'll just give a few seconds. Okay, so teamwork, exactly, encouragement, bringing people along with you. That's amazing, all right? So because leadership is a team sport, leadership is important to lead the way for the people around you, correct? Direction, yes, very good. Working together, collective effort to overcome uncertainty. I like that, yes. So that is correct. Leadership is a powerful thing, both positive and negative. Yes. Clear direction, especially in ambiguous times. Guidance, correct. Representation, yes, correct. If you want to stand up for a cause, if you want to fight for people's rights, all right. If you want to advocate for a cause as well, leadership is really important. So, so Simona says it is a step from one person is in command to everyone. Everybody gives their own contribution. Yes, so getting collective efforts, working on things together. Uh, so Sharon says conflict or differing ideas. Yes, exactly. So leadership is essential to manage conflict, and conflict is it's not a bad or a good thing, all right? It's just how we manage it. So there is healthy conflict, there is healthy tension, there is healthy debate. It's just how we handle it. All right. So all of you are spot on. All right. So Sharon also says teamwork, accountability, sharing the effort or weight. Very good. Love those. So thanks so much for all of your inputs and ideas. So so essentially, leadership is really, really important in based on all these images in three key areas. So first is chaos navigation. So like some of you mentioned, navigating through uncertainty. So especially in times of turbulence, when things are very volatile around us, things are really unpredictable. We don't know what's next, or anything could happen at any time, especially when you're leading a team with very limited information around you. We have tasted that firsthand during COVID in itself. We had no idea what was going on. We haven't been through this in our generation. So it's something new for everyone. So it's just seeing things unfold on a day-to-day basis, right? So navigating through chaos, leadership is definitely very, very critical during challenging times, right? Number two, so change management. Change is indeed the only constant. All right, so there is no running away from change, and it's how we perceive change. It's how we position ourselves for change. It is how we manage change. It is how we prepare for change, and also it is how we can take advantage of change. All right, so if you have really strong leadership, you can actually help the team to thrive in the midst of change, right? And the third point here, so capability development. So like we mentioned, teamwork. So building a team that is cohesive, united, aligned, as well as high performing. All right, so making sure that everyone is marching on the same beat, everyone's on the same page, everyone is really dedicated and committed to a singular common goal or purpose. All right, that is a very, very powerful thing. So we can see that being played out in the world around us for good or for not so good reasons, right? So leadership is a tool that can be used for good or for harm. So that's why it is, if we are leaders, it is a very, very big responsibility, right? It is our fiduciary duty to be stewards, to be proper and good stewards of the people who we are in charge of. All right. All right. So how many of us here have come across this statement? So if you've heard of this before, pop in yes in the chat. All right. So people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. All right. So this is a kind of like a common saying. So whether you're reading a HR article, or whether we're talking about the workforce, the future of work, talent in general, employee culture, engagement, and all that. So this is something that it is really pertinent. But whether this is true or not, so I came across an article that actually challenged this. Right. So whether this is actually a fact or whether it is a myth. All right, so let us try to unpack this together. So I came across a very interesting article by Culture Amp, right, that actually ran a study to debunk that statement, whether it really holds its weight as what we deem it to be. Right. So what they found is that management matters. Management is really, really important, but leadership actually matters more. Right. So leadership has more weight on a one-to-one basis alongside management. Okay, so this is actually really interesting, and I found this very, very refreshing. So let's look at some numbers. So according to their study, um, they came up with different measures of success, right? So the effect of management and leadership on employee commitment and retention, right? So you can see different grids here. Notice there is great manager and leaders, all right? So this basically measures whether a person is a good or a bad manager, and whether that same person is a good or a bad or poor leader, right? So poor manager, poor leader, great manager, poor leader, poor manager, great leaders, and then great manager, great leaders, right? So poor manager, poor leaders only has like a 22% chance of success on influencing employee commitment and retention, which is not surprising, right? And if we see at the top right side here, so if someone is a great manager and also a great leader, they are they have an 89% chance of success and effectiveness in driving employee commitment and retention. Right? It is also not surprising as well. But one thing which I want to point out attention to is not the numbers in itself, right? But actually the relationship uh, between the numbers. So if we look closely and we compare them side by side, so notice if we look at the top two, all right, great manager, poor leader, great leader. All right, so if someone is already a great manager but a poor leader, if we just help that person to develop their leadership capabilities, they will become 89% effective compared to being 38%. All right, so this is actually a 2 times improvement, which is really interesting. Right. And then if we look at the bottom one, all right, so poor manager, poor leader, if someone is in the category, and if we just help that person become a better leader, even though their managerial skills is still as poor as before, what happens is that their effectiveness goes from 22% to 60%, which is actually a 3 times improvement. So simply put, when we just help someone develop their leadership capabilities, it actually, that there is a compounding effect. And there is it is literally a force multiplier. So if someone's already a good manager, you just enhance their leadership skills, it is a 2 times leverage. They are 2 times more effective. And if someone is not the best manager, but you just help them become a great leader, they will become 3 times more effective. All right, so you can see that we can use the power of leverage of leadership. So okay, so if we are taking down notes, you can write down leadership. Leadership is not only a tool, it's not only a skill, it is leverage. All right, so a small increase in leadership skills can unlock huge potential, huge outcomes, and huge impact. Right, so this is the power of leadership. All right. Okay. So something to bear in mind. All right. So even though we want to improve our managerial skills, all in good. All right. But what this study is actually saying is that if you can only spend the same amount of time focusing on managerial skills or leadership skills, they'll rather us focus on leadership skills, because it actually unlocks more effectiveness and capability. Right. Really, really interesting. Okay, so if we are taking down notes, write this down as well. So in the midst of, because there's going to be a lot of content, but if we forget everything, and if we can only take away one single thing from today, just remember this, all right? The best example of leading is leading by example, right? It's very, it's not just a play on words, but it is actually very profound, all right? So the best way we can exert influence is by walking the talk, all right? Because we can only lead people, we lead people best if we have already been there, or if we are going there together with them. All right. So the best example of leading is leading by example. Okay. Cool. And why is leadership important? So this is a very nice meme for comical relief. So having a non-toxic boss who guides, supports, and teaches you. So this is like the mom cheetah and the baby cheetah. So thank you. Or this is like your boss and this is yourself. I'll never forget this. I would fight for you. Right. So maybe some of us have the privilege of having a senior or a boss or a mentor who really stood by for us. So that's why we want to be the boss that others deserve. All right, because it's really nice when you have a leader and a manager who is rooting for you and who has your back. All right, so we want to be that person to the people under our charge. Okay, so this is just some things to bear in mind on the importance of leadership. Okay, so let us shift gears slightly. So just now we briefly mentioned this concept of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So so for those who have actually heard of this, can you pop in yes into the chat so I can see? Okay, very nice. Okay, cool. So for those who are not too familiar of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is basically, you can call this like a framework or a mental model on the different levels of needs which us humans have. All right, so all the way from the most basic, primitive and foundational needs, all the way up to the most aspirational needs. All right, so I'll just unpack this briefly for us. All right, so right at the bottom of the ladder, we have our physiological needs: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction. All right, this is essential for survival of the human species. Right, if we don't meet these needs, nothing else matters. Right, so we need this for our basic core survival. Very important. All right, so what happens once these needs are met? Then we can actually look at the next level. We can actually aspire to the next stage of things. So the next stage are safety needs, right? So things like personal security, employment, resources, health, property. Okay, so having a nice place to live in, all right? Having a roof over your head, right? Safety needs, having a job to go to, being able to support yourself, your essential and basic needs, okay? Pay the bills and all that. And then moving up, we have love and belonging. So friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection, right? So being part of a community, of a collective, right? Because we're now slowly looking beyond our own needs the higher we go. Okay. And then the next level is esteem. So respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. Right. So at this level, we want to be proud of working on things that are meaningful to us, things that are aligned to our values. We want to do work that has an impact. All right. So and we want to do things which at the end of the day we can feel proud of. Right. So do things which we can be proud of. So that is the esteem level. Yeah, so Matthias says, I think that love and belonging was definitely a challenge for many during the COVID-19 pandemic. Exactly, yeah. So during COVID in itself, many things are being challenged. So sometimes when we go through crisis, we might actually revert all the way to the most basic needs, because we start to question the things around us. We want to make sure that our basis of life is taken care of. Right. So like, are we in okay health? Are we able to protect our loved ones? All right. Are we able to weather the storm? All right. Doesn't matter about our possessions too much. Doesn't matter about luxury, holidays, and all that. Those are relatively trivial, especially when we're going through a crisis. All right. So that's a very good point. So building up from esteem, what do we have? We have self-actualization, right? So this starts to become a bit more philosophical and spiritual. So the desire to become the most that one can be. So we want to live a legacy. We want to live a life of impact. We want to live a life of influence. We want to work for a cause which we believe in. We want to make a dent in the universe. We want to live a life of no regrets, going to that point. All right. So you can see here is actually start off right at the bottom here, and then we slowly build our way up. All right. So self-actualization can't sustain itself if the bottom tiers are compromised. Right. So if our physiological needs are taken care of, then we can work towards satisfying our safety needs, so on and so forth, and we can build ourselves up from there. And then if we go through crisis, sometimes we take a step back, just to focus on what really matters. Right. So this is we we are at different stages. So at different stages in life, going through different phases, different seasons in life, we might actually go up or down this whole hierarchy, right? So this is actually a very useful tool, especially when you interact with people, right? Because the hierarchy not only shows what people are looking for, but also where they are operating from, i.e. their state of mind. All right, so let me just elaborate on this if we are wondering how that ties into our state of minds, right? So a higher stage requires a higher state, right? So if we want to get to a higher stage in performance, in results, in success, or in life, we need to be able to operate from a higher state of thinking, all right? So higher state of mind, lower state of mind. All right. So it's not to say one is right or wrong. All right. But imagine if we just only focus on our physiological needs, in that case, we won't really have technological inventions. We won't really have innovation, because we're just thinking of our own basic needs. All right. So it's only once we step out from it, once we think on a higher level, that is where we end up at a higher state of mind. And that is where we can actually start to be very transformational around us. Okay. So to put things into perspective, some examples of activities which are lower state versus higher state. So if someone's operating on a very low state of mind, it could be it could look like them performing repetitive and menial tasks, day in and day out. You just do your routines. There's nothing spectacular about it. It could mean like just always just huge focus on oneself, being on the defensive, thinking small, playing it safe, and sometimes being driven by impulse and immediate satisfaction. Right? It's all about the now. It's all about what we feel like doing. It's all about impulse. It's all about your needs, uh, and all that. Right? So you can see that it's kind of very self-centered for lower state activities. However, if we are able to transcend into higher state activities, that is where we can go into the more strategic and innovative pieces of work. We start to focus less on ourselves and more on others, focusing on the cause of the mission, going on the offense. Um, putting ourselves out there, going for it, thinking big, and also being driven by purpose and delayed gratification. All right, so this is where people are willing to sacrifice their own needs. They're willing to pay the price for things like freedom, for things like rights, for things like representation. They put their lives on the line, they put their reputation on the line, they put their livelihoods on the line. Yeah, so because if someone's operating at a lower state, if a building is on fire, all right, we just think of about ourselves, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But if we are on a higher state, all right, so for example, people in emergency services, first responders and all that, when the building is on fire, they actually run to the fire, all right, because they think less on themselves. It is a very noble and sacrificial position that they're coming from, right? So this is something for us to just think about whenever we are assessing ourselves or whenever we are interacting with others. So using this Maslow hierarchy, the reason why I call this the Maslow's check-in is whenever you're having conversations with your team, all right, on an individual or on a group basis, have a think of what state they are in, all right? Are they focused on survival, or are they focused on thriving and doing amazing work and delivering great outcomes? All right, and there is no right or wrong answer. They might be going through issues on their side, so this just helps us to have more awareness, not just on ourselves but also the people around us. Okay, cool. Number 3, coaching styles. Right, so this is something which if you as a boss, leader, or manager can use in your interactions. All right, and I find this very, very practical as well. So how does this actually unfold? If you've attended my coaching skills workshop previously, this will be familiar for yourself, right? So nevertheless, we'll go through it together, right? So 2 axes here, horizontal and vertical. So the vertical axis is transactional involvement, and the horizontal axis is transformational involvement. All right, so what does this mean? So if you're a manager, if you're high on transaction, so things which are transactional are things like, have you done XYZ? What are your KPIs? What are your targets? Have you hit those numbers? Is it done or is it not done? All right, so that is very transactional. Have you done your homework? All right, have you made those phone calls? Have you organized meetings with the clients? Have you sold cups of coffees today? All right, so very, very transactional. But on the other axis, it's more transformational. Right, so like, are you making a difference? Are you happy where you are? Are you enjoying the work? Do you see your work making an impact in the community? Right, so those are more transformational questions, right? So both are equally important, but depending on the situation and depending on the person's style, there'll be different emphasis on different areas, right? Cool. So 4 quadrants here. So if we look over here, low on transactional and low on transformational, that is passive availability. And then if you are low on the transformation side of things, but high on transactional stuff, so that is directive coaching. And then low transaction, high transformation, that is non-directive, and then high on both axes, that is trusted advisory, right? So let me just unpack all of these for us. So if we look over here, start off with the first one. So low transformational, low transformation, high transactional. So this is directive coaching. So this is more of a command and control approach, right? So it's telling and selling. Traditional mentoring is that. So pretty much very straightforward knowledge transfer. This is what I know, this is what I'm experienced in, and this is what I want you to do, all right? Or these are my recommendations. Very straightforward, no nonsense. One interesting thing to note about this is it is utilized very frequently, especially in crisis mode or to damage control. So the reason why this is very essential in times of crisis is because there is no time for nonsense. There is no time for debate. So if the building is crumbling down because of an earthquake or if it's on fire, there is put our feelings aside. It is an emergency. Your lives are in danger. Just follow instructions. All right. So it doesn't matter whether you're hungry or not. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. Just follow the instructions of the fire marshals. Then we'll all get to safety. Right. So it's not to say whether that is right or wrong, but it's always situational. Right. So that is where it comes into play. Or sometimes when you don't really have much time, when you just want to get straight to the point with your direct report, you just want to find out their performance, whether they hit their targets or not, this comes to play. Right. So yeah, Matthias, this is very, very frequently used in the military because in a combat environment, and I've had a taste of military training in Singapore as well. So this is very essential, you know, in a combat environment, uh, high pressure, high stress. This is very, very important. All right, just we need to get the job done. The mission is key. All right, so this is directive coaching. Number two, what do we have? Passive availability. Right, so this is actually low on transaction and low on transformation, low on both. Right, so this is essentially getting out of people's way. Uh, this is really relevant when your team members are already high performers or when there's nothing much you can do for them. Right, so whatever they need, it's outside of your remit or outside of your skill set. So it's best for someone else to take care of them. Let us just respectfully not get in the way. Okay, so I'm here if you need me. So this is important as well, because sometimes the right thing to do is not to do anything at all. Right. So as a leader, it's really important for us to recognize this, especially if we are always keen to jump in to help. Right. So sometimes just take a few moments to assess the situation, whether do you need direct intervention or not. Okay, number three. So this is non-directive coaching. That this one is low on transaction and high on transformation. So this is highly transformational, and there's very little on the transactional side of things. So this is more pastoral, kind of like when you meet with your counselor. It's very consultative. It involves a lot of active listening, asking the right questions, and bouncing off ideas. So this is where we have heart-to-heart conversations. We can dig into a bit deeper into the issues and challenges people are facing, struggling, or some of the things they are aspiring to. Right. So this is very quite different from directive coaching. All right, so this is like your pastor sitting down with you, seeing if you're okay, you're handling things well, you're coping fine, and all that. Okay. And number four, trusted advisory. So this is the culmination of being high on the transactional and transformational side of things. All right, so this comes into place and is really effective when you have established trust with your direct reports. All right, and this is where you can actually shift gears to go into to provide accountability for them. So once you've already understand what they are looking for, what they're aspiring to, then you can start to be more transactional and hold them accountable to their goals. Right, so identifying and leveraging opportunities together, coming up with a plan of attack, working on the strategy, and also looking at results and performance. All right, so the difference here is that once we've through pastoral care and guidance, we've built up their trust. We understand where they're coming from better. Then we can bring things up a notch, right? And then we start to work on concrete tasks, come up with a plan of attack, and start to achieve things together, right? So just to wrap up, so the directive coaching style, passive availability, non-directive, and also trusted advisory. Okay, so the key questions which we need to ask ourselves is that the first one is, which style do you tend to gravitate towards? And the next question to ask is, which style is most needed for the situation you're going through right now, right? Because some people, they are very straightforward. They are no nonsense, get straight to business, don't fluff around, very directive. Right? They might not be the nicest people to talk to. They don't care about how is your day going, only unless it's relating to business, right? They don't really want to know what are your holiday plans and all that. No chit chat, no small talk, all right? Just get straight to the point. There's a place for that. On the other hand, some people, they are very conversational, all right? They like to find out about how you're dealing, not just in work, but also outside of work and all that. But the challenge with that is that, you know, we might go around in circles before we talk about business, right? So it could be a cultural thing. It could be a personality related trait as well. So it's just being being aware of your own individual tendencies as well. And then if you notice that you're gravitating towards certain areas, think about which areas you need to improve on, and also which areas are best suited for the situation. Because if it's crisis, just be very direct, all right? So just get straight to the point, see the problem for what it is, and then work things together, work things out together. Okay, but if there's more time, if the building is not burning, then you can actually sit down with the team to consult with them, get their ideas, get their input, and their feedback on things. Okay. Cool. So number 4. Okay, so dissecting and handling tough conversations. This is going to be very interesting and exciting as well. So we will, if we are in a position of influence, we will always have to go through this. All right. So this is pretty much part and parcel of leadership life, having tough conversation. All right, so it's not the easiest thing. Sometimes it's not avoidable. In an ideal world, we don't have to go through this, but this is the real life. And sometimes we have to sit down with our direct reports to share not so good news, to share critical feedback and all that. Not the nicest things to have. So that's why it's really important for us to build up these kind of skills. Okay. So question for all of us is, what are some examples of difficult conversations in the workplace? So feel free to pop into the chat. So what are some kinds of difficult conversations if you are a manager or a leader you have with your direct reports, right? So underperformance issues, correct. Performance related conversations are never easy. In fact, it's one of the toughest. We are not renewing your contract, yes, or we have to let you go, or dismissal. Yep, so people being laid off if the position is being made redundant. Or yeah, so had someone falling asleep during meetings. So actually raising that issue with them. All right, so that is not easy as well. Being confrontational. Yeah. Yeah, so Matthias, that's a very good point. So it could be cultural as well, not just on a company or corporate culture or workplace culture, but also to do with the country in itself. So that is very good insight. Thanks for sharing that, and also for the rest for popping into the chat. All right, so those are spot on and correct. So different types of difficult conversations, like we mentioned, delivering news on redundancies, asking for promotion or a pay rise, because even if you're a manager, you also have your own manager. We all have a boss, even if we are the boss, and this is not easy, right? Asking for more money, uh, addressing poor performance, yeah. So this is not easy. Investigating complaints or misconduct, reporting a grievance or inappropriate behavior, admitting to mistakes. All right, so especially for leaders or people in high positions, this is not easy, right? So if you screwed up, admitting to that, not easy. Okay, so these are some of kinds of these are the most common kinds of difficult conversations which we can expect in the workplace. So how can we deal with this as effectively as possible? Right. So this is a framework which we can all use. Right. I always like to be as practical as possible, so that we can actually take things and put it into use straight away. So handling difficult conversations. So similar triangle, we've seen a triangle in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So likewise, you start off with the base preparation, and then after you've build the foundation, then you can start to work on the conversation in itself. And then after we have that, then we work on the resolution together. Okay, so let us unpack all of these. So starting right at the bottom, we have preparation. So before you have that tough conversation, you need to prepare. It is a must. All right, don't go into that room unprepared. That's the worst. Okay, so how do we best prepare? Identify the purpose. So why do we need to have this conversation? Very important. Check ourselves. So what I mean by this is do a sense check of yourself, making sure that you are seeing things objectively, that you put aside biases. All right, you are not doing things out of emotion or in the heat of the moment, right? So doing a sense check, having self-awareness, right? Building up your case, right? So if you are addressing performance issues with that person, like what is the some examples and the evidence of their lack of performance, right? So gathering your data, gathering your facts, gathering your materials, okay? And then coming up with the negotiables and non-negotiables, right? So this is also mentally preparing yourself that when you go into the conversation, sometimes it might be a give and take. So ideal world, we can have all that we want, but sometimes we might need to work out a middle ground with the other person. So it's good to understand what are some things which you cannot budge on, and then some things which you have a degree of flexibility on, some wiggle room, right? So negotiables and non-negotiables. And then you want to clear up assumptions. Okay, so when you make certain statements, are there certain underlying assumptions to them? Um, the next one is to de-emotionalize. So remove all emotions. So as part of your preparation, it's to just make sure that you cool off, right? If you feel very tense, very stressed, if you feel enraged or you feel angry, just spend some moment to just calm down, all right? See things from a neutral or objective standpoint, and also make the effort to see things from their point of view. So put yourself in their shoes. What are they going through? What are some of the challenges they might be experiencing on their side, right? So this is the preparation part. And just to talk about de-emotionalizing, there are some things which you can do, right? So if we feel very tense in the moment, so for example, if if your direct report has said something really nasty about yourself in public, or about some other colleague, which is not right, and then you feel very tense, right? And then you just want to grab that person, bring them to a meeting room and just sort it out. Take some time to calm yourself, of all the excess and unnecessary, the excess emotion, right? So what we can do is just remember this acronym, HOMER, all right? So Homer Simpson. So hydration and food, all right? Because if we go into the meeting dehydrated and hungry, it can get on our nerves. All right, that's why we have the phrase hangry. All right, so make sure you fill your stomach. All right, have some water. It actually does help your physiological state. Oxygenation, what we mean by this is making sure that you breathe properly. If you're tense, your breath is very short and shallow. You know, you why did they do that to me? All right, so just calm down, take deep breaths. All right. Meditation, so just bringing yourself to a quiet space, ease your thoughts, let go of all of the clutter in your mind. That helps. Elevation, so what we mean by this is psychological elevation, so seeing things from a higher point of view. All right, so instead of being obsessed about the trees, see it from the bird's eye view, see the forest. All right, the larger landscape. And last but not least, rest. All right, so if you had a long day, if you're really exhausted, and if it's not too urgent, just sleep on it. All right, so let your body restore itself, and then once you have good enough rest, the next day you can come in fresh, and then you realize that you're able to think more clearly. Okay. All right, so conversation. So once we've done the preparation legwork, the next phase is the conversation. So this is where you start the dialogue, establish psychological safety, right? So just making sure that everyone has the right to be open and honest in a respectful manner, very important. Okay, acknowledge the problem, attack the problem, not the person. All right, so see the problem for what it is, be very objective, use simple language, avoid technicalities or jargon, just get straight to the point. Then seek first to understand and then to be understood. If you're not sure, clarify, do not assume. All right, ask them to rephrase, reiterate what they've mentioned just to check understanding. Okay, and then observe their body language, right? So this is very helpful. Whether they are slouching, whether they have their arms folded, whether they have too much eye contact or too little, facial expressions, all right? The way they stand, are they leaning on one leg or are they as rigid as a rock? You know, and then depersonalize if possible. So we talk about de-emotionalizing. This is depersonalizing. So what we mean by this, these are some examples, right? And I actually find this very, very helpful. Okay, so sometimes in the heat of the moment, we can sound very accusatory when we mention the word you in the statement or the question. So like, why didn't you send the document to me? Could you respond to me quickly next time? Have you read the CEO's email? So it's like literally finger pointing, right? And if you're on the receiving end, it's can put you on edge, right? So the way to actually do this is to remove the word you as much as possible. So why didn't you send a document to me? You can change it to, I noticed that I didn't receive the document, or I noticed the document wasn't sent through, right? Notice it's more palatable. It's more neutral sounding now, right? Could you respond to me quickly next time? A good way to rephrase this is, if this can be actioned quickly next time, that will be great. Notice it's not pointing fingers at anyone. So anyone who is reasonably intelligent will get the point, right? They will know that you're actually referring to them. And then, have you read the CEO's email? Did you get a chance to read the CEO's email? All right, so it's more of being more inquisitive, so to speak, rather than like finger pointing, like have you read it or not? Okay, so this is something which I've used before. it's very, very helpful. All right, it helps to make things more neutral and not to put that person at edge. Okay. And last but not least, resolution. So all the way at the apex. So once you've done the groundwork of the preparation and once you're in conversation, the next thing you can do with the other party is to work on the resolution piece. So ensure the cards are laid on the table before proceeding. So you put down all of the different options, right, based on what has been discussed. Think win-win, all right? So think about how both parties can walk away with something. Discuss alternatives, work towards an outcome, and check that the other party is on the same page. All right. So resolution. Okay. So preparation followed by conversation and then resolution. So depending on which part, so start to think about which areas you are strong in and which areas you are struggling in. Right? And then you can use some of these to help yourself. So I guess we are moving into the last section, right? So practical tools and best practices, right? So just to wrap things up on a few things which we have covered, coaching styles, the importance of leadership, the Maslow's check-in, as well as dealing with difficult conversations. So these are some things just to wrap up our thinking and just to serve you in your leadership moving forward. All right, so good reminder, we are all here to serve, right? So how do you spell leadership? Leadership, SERVICE, service. Leadership is service. Um, even though they are of a lower rank than us, they might be, but we are here to serve them and to support them at the end of the day. All right. So it's to bring out the best in others, to enable, encourage, and empower them. You as a leader, you are here to be a great role model to them. Sometimes you are there to bear the brunt of risk for them. Leaders sometimes have to take a lot of hit from higher leadership to actually protect and shield their direct reports, right? Sometimes, yeah, we have to step into that role, right? So we're here to serve them. Next up, leave your baggage at the door. Right, so when you're having a critical conversation, make sure you go to the meeting early and like we mentioned, get into a good headspace, meditate, get a bit of food in your system, get a bit of good space, right? Focus on them, as in focus on how you can serve them, all right? And then be human, humble, and vulnerable, right? Because we are all human. No one has got it right. No one's perfect. We all make mistakes. Praise publicly, correct privately. All right. So if people are successful in something, be specific about the wins, shout it out, let everyone know, and then give them credit. All right. Mention that person. All right. However, if mistakes were made or areas of correction are due, then we do the correction privately, right? So give them constructive feedback, depersonalize, like we mentioned, and then work on finding a way forward with them. Last but not least, be that boss you will follow. All right, be that leader you follow. Be the manager whom you want to look, who you will look up to. All right, so be the leader worth following. Always and only lead by example. Walk the talk, and make sure we always practice what we preach.